What is Ukraine's role in the fight against Trump? More about Latynina, Arestovich, Sobchak, and Biden. Actually, I should say Biden's because we'll talk about both Joe and Hunter, as they say, all in the same boat. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you remember how the son of the then United States Vice President, Hunter Biden, Joe was the vice president and his son was Hunter Biden. He received, how much was it, 2 or 2.5 million from a Ukrainian energy company? For what exactly? According to the Republicans' accusations, his father was covering for this company called Burisma. President Zelensky at one time refused to provide the United States Prosecutor's Office with information about this case, saying that by doing so, meaning by providing the prosecutor's office with actual information, he would be interfering in United States elections, which Zelensky didn't want. Actually, it was the United States Democratic Party that opposed it, as they controlled most in Ukraine.
They tried to mislead us, whether it was about the laboratory in Wuhan had nothing to do with the creation of COVID. It just came from the market. Yes, of course, or masks, they're great, if you wear 2 or 3, that's even better. Yes, of course. I mean, it was lie after lie. Hunter Biden's laptop, which was bought and paid for by the Russians and kindly provided to you, Rudy Giuliani. Of course not, that was completely wrong. It was all a lie, and they lied and lied. And 51 former spies and hackers got together and wrote a big letter to a politician and actually shut down the Twitter account. Now, X, thank God, New York Post, because they were trying to control the narrative. Those days are gone and everything is coming out.
It seems that democracy is going down the drain, and along with it, Volodymyr Alexandrovich Zelensky.
Democracy is going down the drain. And what about Volodymyr? Well, now we know the secret is out. Everything Joe Biden told us was that it was just a conspiracy theory to think that his family was doing something wrong. His own government knew that his son was connected to a corrupt company, and this was harming the American public and American politics. Yes.
It was causing harm because, the Ukrainians were sitting there saying, we were. Why is Hunter Biden working for Burisma? And they didn't even know that he was getting like $600,000. That's unheard of. You don't get a seat on the board of directors for $600,000 a year. That only happens in Ukraine. Apparently, when you work for a shady energy company that wants to get a little support from Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and says, hey, we have this problem with an investigator who's kind of digging into us. Can you do something about it? And apparently, Dad was all too willing to help.
For loan guarantees, I went probably for the 12th or 13th time. Kyiv was supposed to announce that there would be another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I got commitments from Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, but they didn't. They claimed to have it, planned a press conference, then refused and said they wouldn't do it. We're not going to give you $1 billion. They said, you don't have the authority, you're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm leaving here in, I think, 6 hours. I looked at them and said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor isn't fired, you won't get the money. Well, they fired him, and they put in someone who was reliable at the time. Well, they're still them, so that's what they did.
Some real ones.
You see,
someone whom Burisma wanted because, they had influence. They had Hanuman. This.
Well, they were throwing out Shokin. Poroshenko did it, of course. Looks like he called the White House to find out if Biden was lying or not. And there they confirmed to him that if he didn't remove the prosecutor general who was investigating Hunter Biden's case, the United States would deny Ukraine loan guarantees. And as a result, Ukraine wouldn't get the billion it desperately needed. You might ask, what does Zelensky have to do with this anyway? He came to power pledging loyalty to the United States Democratic Party. He refused, so to speak, to hand things over to the enemies. And for the Democratic Party, the Republicans are the enemies. At the very least, Trump definitely is. The enemy of my friend is also my enemy, which is usually true for Republicans. So he didn't hand anything over to the legitimate United States authorities because it could have compromised his friends. So Biden, Obama, Kerry, the Clintons, Who else was making money in Ukraine then? But even after that, he still asked Trump for money and assistance.
That's bad. I mean, that's really, really bad. And now it turns out that it was Biden who actually vetoed the CIA memo that would have informed everyone about the concerns that Ukraine really had at the time.
And the charmers from Biden's White House, well, it's just one thief after another, that's clear, so to speak. As soon as you mention Biden's White House, you immediately think of one thief chasing another. They started getting nervous that members of Congress might dig into their small but dirty secrets. And they decided, well, kind of like Pol Pot, like Mao Zedong and other Genghis Khans, so they would also wiretap everyone who could potentially harm them in the future. They record everything. They might use it for blackmail someday. We wouldn't have found out about this if it weren't for a few employees from the FBI, the Department of Justice, and so on. They would come to the Republican Congress and say, guys, something terrible is happening here.
This is similar to counterintelligence program, which happened under Hoover's FBI and continued up until the 60s, until finally you didn't have it anymore. The informants come to light. As Dan said that when they got to the FBI agents, they said, oh, thank God, because all these crazy things were happening here, all of it in this room, right? Here you go. Here are all the documents. Here's what you need to know. Several whistleblowers came forward, similar to counterintelligence program. They came forward and exposed what our government was doing when the CIA sent a memo saying, you know what, it's not a good idea that Hunter Biden, this was back during Obama's term, right? Hunter Biden is doing business with Burisma. The Ukrainians don't really like it because Hunter Biden is working with a corrupt company while Joe Biden is telling them to stop being so corrupt.
On one hand, Joe Biden's son is getting serious money from Burisma so that his dad can protect this business. And on the other hand, this same Joe demands the dismissal of Ukraine's Prosecutor General Shokin, claiming that he is corrupt. How interesting. So what is allowed for Jupiter Biden is not allowed for the Bolshokin in Ukraine? I don't know who Biden will be corrupting Ukraine with. And you, don't you dare steal without me. The key phrase is, without me.
Senator Grass, you have Grassley, you have Sandra Johnson, you have Grassley. They want answers right now because it's not normal when an active senator is being talked about, well, their phone. We can't say that they were being wiretapped because Public Broadcasting Service and the New York Times will accuse us of fake news. So let's use the correct terminology. Got it. Or as Fox reported, that's probably the simplest way to say their communications were intercepted. And by the way, they weren't the only ones. All right, they targeted 92 different groups, all with conservative affiliations, grassroots initiatives, including
my friend Charlie Kirk's group at Turning Point. It's insane.
This is an important event. You're looking at a letter that was just sent to FBI Director Kash Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi. What does it say? It says that Congress has obtained evidence showing that the Biden administration was directly involved in trying to help launch Jack Smith's January 6th investigation against President Trump. Specifically, the White House counsel's office secretly got former President Trump's and Vice President Mike Pence's phones and gave them to prosecutors. They're basically using the Department of Justice against his future 2024 opponent to find compromising material on possible crimes. There's a lot of information coming in. Does he also have more evidence of the White House's involvement?
Yes, he does. There will be more. I mean, I can tell you that, and my sources say there will be much more. A lot.
We already know that 92 organizations and representatives in the United States Congress were being watched. I mean, including 8 members of the Senate, and I think 1 member of the House of Representatives. Well, maybe even significantly more. We just found out about 9 today, but there's still a lot more we'll find out soon, things we didn't know yet. That's what we've been promised. Yes. I wonder what else we'll find out, who else they were listening to, who they were blackmailing, what else they were up to. And here, by the way, is Senator Kennedy.
But the phone company and the chief legal counsel of the phone company, or companies, if there was more than one, could have said, this is serious as an aneurysm. This is as serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. This is a sitting United States senator. So the chief legal counsel would probably advise the chief executive officer, well, you need to file a motion to dismiss.
Senator, usually the phone company complies with subpoenas from the United States attorney.
No, they can, but it's optional. They could challenge it. Senator Tack.
Or maybe they should have just bought some balls on Amazon.
I told you.
Instead of just saying, of course, I'll show you the phone records of a sitting United States senator based on an administrative subpoena.
Just so it's clear how the Democrats lie, take a look at this remarkable compilation. It concerns the amazing story of how several Nobel laureates in economics suddenly, on their own, without any coercion, wrote a letter about how wonderful it is. Wonderful. Comrade Biden is leading the country down the road to building a bright future, and how well his work is going. Bidenomics, maybe Biden, but Bidenomics, probably yes, that's the one, so Biden. An economy that has caused inflation, deficits, wild fuel prices, job losses, and other issues. Very good things. Very good things. Watch and enjoy.
Today, 15 Nobel Prize winners in economics published a letter supporting the president's Build Back Better plan, including 4 Nobel laureates who recently emphasized this in an open letter.
17 Nobel Prize winners who stated that this will help deal with inflation.
14 Nobel Prize winners in economics. They said that this would really lower the cost, reduce the deficit, and that it's fully paid for, and that it would reduce inflation. 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics and 15 Nobel Prize winners in economics released a letter yesterday. 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics. They said it spontaneously, wrote to me together.
Spontaneously and together, they wrote, "Gentlemen, before I forget, on Sundays at 10 a.m. Los Angeles time, I host open broadcasts. I talk a bit, let's say, about entertaining political economy, and then I answer questions that viewers ask me. We also have a special program for those who support us financially, $4 a month, and you become a sponsor of our channel. And for sponsors, we make video series that are not available to non-sponsors. If someone wants to give a little more than $4, we won't resist. And just regular donations, if someone has a little money they want to give to an important, worthwhile cause. Below there will be a link to support the A channel for Americans. If the amount is, let's say, $200 or more, then we will send you a document that will allow you to deduct this amount from your taxes. Well, now let's get back to our Nobel laureates, who once again spontaneously and simultaneously wrote together.
And 14 Nobel Prize winners in economics wrote to me, saying that this will also reduce the impact of inflation. And I told you about the opinion of 17 Nobel Prize winners who claim that this will reduce inflation, not increase it. And that's a quote from 15 Nobel Prize winners in economics.
Because this agenda I'm talking about is mine. And 17 Nobel Prize winners in economics wrote me a letter about 3 weeks ago stating that this bill would ease long-term inflationary pressures.
14 Nobel Prize winners in economics. They say that what I'm proposing will reduce inflation.
All right. It's good that he remembered that he's going to lower inflation, but he accidentally mixed it up and raised it instead. Well, we haven't seen anything like this in the last 40, maybe even 50 years. But he meant well, so you know, guys, he really meant well. You might say that I have a nasty character, that I shouldn't have made fun of the old man. I really wanted to, and my mom said if you shouldn't but still want to, it's okay to do it a little. For your information, prior to this letter, 17 Nobel Prize-winning economists lived in the United States. But shortly before this amazing circus, 2 people, Bernanke and Duflo, moved to Switzerland. So 100% of all Nobel laureates living in the United States is 15, or 120% of all Nobel laureates is 17. That is, they didn't know that these two had left, and included them as well. At the same time, they were eager to lie. Poor, poor laureates. No one ever explained to them that lying is wrong. They all grew up without mothers. Editor, proofreader.
I don't want this to be covered up, all right? No, because I think you'll face resistance from all sides. I think the telecommunications companies will be on you like a bad rash, because they have liability here just for transferring those records when they knew what was going on. I think some FBI agents could be held liable.
I think so, yes.
The special prosecutor may share some responsibility. Jack Smith, this includes you. If I were your special counsel and you appointed me, and I wanted to obtain the records of a sitting United States senator, would you expect me to inform you about it as the Attorney General of the United States? You'd better.
Let them do it.
Yes, and do we know about this in V? With 8 sitting United States senators, did they inform Attorney General Garland?
Senator, I just found out about this very recently, just like Director Patel. And we can't discuss the details. I don't know many details.
Maybe we should invite Attorney General Garland. Yes, and the special prosecutor told FBI Director Wray, we need Director Wray too. That's something. Let me put it this way. If I were your special counsel and you were the FBI director and I wanted the phone records of a sitting United States senator, did I mention this is a sitting senator?
United States senator? Yes, a couple of times. That's something you would expect me to tell you as the FBI director.
Kennedy is stunned that there was no one in the Justice Department system who would tell the bosses, guys, you're out of your minds. This is a crime. If this comes out, among other things, if it comes out, everyone I was involved with is going to be in trouble. And here's another one of those who was wiretapped. And he's also, well, not just a little furious about it.
I also heard them say, yes, I recorded it to make sure I heard it right. I heard them say that Joe Biden never went after his political enemies, that Joe Biden never told his attorney general to target his political opponents. That's interesting because I thought yesterday we learned the FBI was wiretapping my phone. Let's review. They wiretapped my phone, Lindsey Graham's, Marsha Blackburn's, and 5 other United States senators' phones. That really seems like they're targeting political opponents. And yet I haven't heard a single word from that side expressing any concern. We only have concern today, but no concern about the Department of Justice wiretapping the phones of sitting United States senators. Because who knows why they don't like them? They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. Did you see this document, Attorney General Bondi? Well, what was going on here? Who ordered this? Who ordered the wiretapping of United States senators' phones?
I want you to listen to some excerpts from a few interviews, actually from 2 interviews with Alexei Arestovich. I think he's a very sharp, intelligent, and insightful person. I'm not always sure that he's highly moral. But right now, we're not talking about his analytical abilities, but about his so-called political future. And also Yulia Latynina, her first interview. The person seems to be very educated, but doesn't know how to separate facts from fakes and doesn't always know how to connect facts and logic into a whole. But without a doubt, it's very interesting as a historian and narrator, let's put it that way, because she knows a hell of a lot. I don't know if it's clear what I mean by historian narrator, but I couldn't come up with a better term.
Let's move directly to what Donald Trump said about Russia and Ukraine, because that's exactly, I see this as giant trolling. And when Trump wished both countries good luck and said that with Europe's help, Ukraine could regain its 1991 territories, and maybe even go further, I paid attention to these words, with Europe's help. I wish you success. We will sell you as many weapons as you need. So going back to what I started with, I began with a question about the state, not so much of the West, but of Europe. I am in this, Tvidi saw. Well, what we've been seeing for some time now is that America has been getting rid of Europe as dead weight. It's actually much more serious than any words, because for 30 years, America made Europe its military colony, but now Trump says it's no longer needed and Europe should handle things itself.
Well, judging by Kaja Kallas's reaction, that really was top-level trolling. She spoke out saying, like in Mimino, the victim whose chandelier broke said, "That's not my child." She said, "We don't owe Ukraine anything or have responsibility for its security. Trump promised to end the killing. He is the main party in NATO, so let him do all that. Europe doesn't owe Ukraine anything."
I'm not entirely sure that Yulia's claim that America treats Europe as its colony has any factual basis or logical foundation. Although perhaps a colony according to Latynina and a colony, let's say, according to the 3 encyclopedic dictionaries I've used, are different things. Now, in the dictionaries, I'll try to formulate what was written in all 3, more or less the same but slightly differently. A colony is a territory deprived of its own political, economic, and often cultural independence, and all important decisions are made by the metropolis. The main goal of the metropolis in holding a colony is to extract natural resources from it. Yes, the language of the metropolis usually becomes the language of the colony. I don't know, I requested a chat with deputies, so does that mean Europe was in some sense a colony of the United States of America? The answer was, are you stupid or what? Have you lost your mind, you tailless monkey? Yes. I decided not to insist.
I fell off my chair laughing and spent half the day coming here after reading that. Because, honestly, I don't need to explain. Yeah.
It's the same here. Kalos told us that it would be good if Russia became smaller. She said so many belligerent things. She is the main ideologist behind the seizure of Russian assets, those 300 billion. Yeah?
She's a bright, shining speaker. So here she suddenly says that we don't owe Ukraine anything. Sorry, that's how it turned out. I get why Putin looks at those applicants with that smug expression, because, well, of course, they're pushing Ukraine to war with all their might. Fight, 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 keep fighting. And then they say, we never promised you anything, even though before that there was so much talk. Europe will be with you until the end. Europe, Europe, Europe. Even if the states turn away, Europe will support you, and so on. The continuation of this rolling, he says 3 things very clearly there. The first thing, look, we will sell a lot of weapons. I'm starting from the end. This is the amount of weapons that will be sold to you, so much that you just won't know what to do with it. You could even send some to Ukraine.
And where will the money come from?
Europeans are already rich. Didn't you budget 800 billion for that? As Blind said, that's like our Ursula von der Leyen. 1 second, we can replace it for you right now. Replace Russian oil and gas with United States oil and gas. Don't hesitate, we've got everything ready. Bam! And you already have oil and gas, and you won't even notice any problems. And third, he said, Ukrainians, you can move on and reclaim everything. And also, Putin has an economic crisis, and you are hitting very accurately and strongly there at some economic facilities that are directly related to the topic of replacing Russian oil and gas in Europe, specifically in the oil refining industry. You're hitting well, keep it up, and everything will be fine. See you in a month. He said,
I have to say that I agree that Arestovich is not Latynina, he says.
If a person is a businessman, you can't expect him to win. He won't start writing commentaries on Arestovich's metaphysics. If a person is a businessman through and through, you can hardly expect him to have the cunning mind of Henry Kissinger. If someone is a true businessman, you can't expect them to write something like Machiavelli's The Prince, a theoretical summary of power principles. He will be doing business. Look, they sold weapons. That's business. Russian gas was pushed out and replaced in Europe by American oil and gas. In my opinion, it's a great idea from Trump's point of view. Everyone criticized him for the tariffs. Remember how much laughter there was? How much people said he would ruin and destroy America? Experts say tariffs are bringing in a lot of money now. Trump says trillions. I don't know about trillions, but they're bringing in a lot for America right now. He's measuring the change. There was this much, now there's less. The delta shows the policy worked.
I think Arestovich is being ironic. But I think that by depriving Russia, the aggressor, of income by tying our oil and gas, tying Europe, so to speak, to our oil and gas, and getting a lot of money from customs duties is very good. So I don't see anything wrong with that. But probably I'm not a philosopher either. Not Machiavelli, not Talleyrand, and not even Biden. But here Alexei slipped up and said some nonsense, like Latynina, about a colony.
But that's not all he has. He started to oppose the anti-phase not just for business reasons. It depends on which group influences him, the ones working around him, among others. But he's capable of making such decisions.
Well, once again, he's also Alexei, so not Talleyrand. But Arestovich is with another internet diva, that's Ksenia Sobchak. She's a vampire woman, now the Komsomol organizer of the Advancing Cavalry Brigade. And something between Budyani and Kaganovich? Well, let's take a look at her.
You are a patriot of Ukraine.
Which Ukraine? Ukrainian and Russian people should not be at war. You
often change your stance.
I'm an imperialist and love grandeur. These comrades are ruining the country. There are systemic human rights violations in Ukraine, and the constitution doesn't work.
So you're giving up 4 regions?
I'm giving up 4 regions and Crimea. If I led Russia, I'd be tougher than Putin, since Ukraine is as unpredictable as I am. Maybe even worse.
This is political.
Suicide.
Maybe. Don't get me wrong, I moved on. Ukraine has an outstanding intellectual mantle. Many still think I'm Yermak's project, just pretending to oppose him. He controls Zelensky.
He's also on grants.
This clearly shows a fascist noose. Yanukovych is nothing compared to Zelensky.
You're acting like a typical abuser, just not toward women now.
I've long been labeled a traitor. For me, it's a tragedy, and I'm doing all I can to stop the war. I'm ready to lay flowers for Russian soldiers. For me, truth matters more than misfortune.
This is an animated intro of the Komsomol goddess, or the anti-Komsomol goddess. By the way, I personally find Kshusha likable. I like that she is always coming up with new images for herself, and I think she truly gets into those roles. It's a mix of Stanislavski, Meyerhold, and Tyrov.
An athlete, actor, soldier, analyst, coach, philosopher, intelligence officer, and chief psychotherapist of Ukraine. He was born in Georgia, completed school in Kiev, and earned his higher education at the Odessa Institute of Land Forces, where he befriended Valery Zaluzhny. Before politics, he acted in theater and film, worked in intelligence, and was interested in esotericism and psychology. Since 2014, he has appeared in the media as a military expert. In 2022, he became an advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine. He gained fame for his daily "everything is under control" reports. He left the office after commenting on the missile in Dnipro shot down by Ukrainian air defense. In 2023, he left Ukraine and was soon involved in 2 criminal cases. He has repeatedly shifted his stance, going from "we will win" to "it's our own fault." Critics label him a flip-flopper, but supporters view him as a voice of reason amid chaos. In 2025, he began advocating for a strategic agreement with Russia, after which sanctions were imposed against him in Ukraine. In Russia, Rosfinmonitoring has listed Alexei Arestovich as a terrorist and extremist. One can only
envy such a biography. I don't care how you feel about Arestovich. Now I'll explain why I showed you this, let's say, video compilation. What did we hear? Europe was pushing Ukraine toward war. Well, we kind of knew that, right? All sorts of visits, all kinds of persuasion from Boris Johnson, Biden, and so on. So it's not just Europe, but also the United States, that is. Biden, that is, the Democrats. Europe demands that Ukraine does not agree to a ceasefire. Secretly it demands, but openly it shouts that this war must be stopped, but says that they will not stop helping, even if the United States leaves. So if Ukraine knew that no one would help them, they would have a different attitude toward the fact that hundreds of young people, not just young people, but Ukrainians, are dying there every day. V. Borisovich, Europe. And Europe said that it would buy weapons from the United States, but now it says that they never promised to defend or finance Ukraine. So at first they were shouting that they would, but now they're saying that they're not obligated. Mr. Zatyagivani, prolonging the war means killing more and more Ukrainian citizens. We understand this very well, and Arestovich understands this very well too. Ukraine must survive as a nation, and Arestovich would agree if he were in charge. He is really counting on it that he might become the head of Ukraine. He would agree to cut off and give away part of the territory, including, accordingly, the 4 regions in Crimea. Arestovich believes Ukraine lacks the strength to reclaim these territories, and the situation may worsen, because basically neither Trump nor a united Europe are really planning to help. And we've got it covered. The letter is coming. E, right? Compared to Zelensky's regime, all of this that, as Arestovich claims, all the Poroshenkos and Yanukovychs are like little children. There's no freedom, the theft is rampant, nobody is punished. People, meaning those at the front, those at home, and so on, are ignored. Criminal cases are opened against those the authorities don't like, and freedom is being crushed. And Ukraine today, judging by what Arestovich says, is no better than Russia. It's the same kind of concentration camp, and on top of that, it's also submitted itself to the United States Democratic Party. An interesting summary from a person who was called a traitor to the homeland in Ukraine by the Ukrainian prosecutor general and was labeled a political enemy and opponent by the Russian Ministry of Justice. I'm not acquainted with Alexei, but there's something about him that's irritating, there is. But at the same time, up to 90% of what I heard were facts and logical conclusions. That is, Arestovich is an intellectual, unlike many other people who appear on our screen, but it seems like he really respects himself a lot. That usually doesn't happen with intellectuals. Well, I didn't say he was an intellectual in that sense. I said he is an intellectual. That's completely different. And by the way, it's not necessary at all in anything. Many intellectuals were considered partial, intellectual in one field, but entirely different in another. Just a hat with a guide, and they listened, so to speak, to whoever they liked, didn't think, and so on. By the way, among the most famous, not pseudo by no means, yes, real partial intellectuals are Albert Einstein and George Orwell. That's it, gentlemen. I think that's all. I wanted to show you where the pointers stand on the scales of the United States-Ukraine relationship and what's actually happening with the endless war in Ukraine. Is there any chance that it will end, and what could make that happen? A trigger? Yes, that's the word. What will be the trigger that sets things off, and so on. Okay, the trigger for ending this war. Goodbye until next time.